My name is Coralie Wales. I am so thrilled to have your company today. We've got a fantastic panel who I'll introduce you to in just a sec. But this is really all about you, our many thousands of people who live with chronic pain all across the country. And this week is about bringing awareness to you and your pain condition and what we can do as a nation to ease the stigma, to connect the treatment options, to understand what it's like to live with chronic pain 24/7 for often many, many years. So welcome everybody. And I'd like to pay my respects, and on behalf of the panel, our respects to the traditional owners of the land that we're all sitting on at the moment, and to welcome our First Nations friends and loved ones to this event, this live Facebook event on this auspicious winter day. But welcome everybody. And I'd like to just take a moment now to share with you, why do we need a Chronic Pain Australia? Now, back in the day, back in 2006, I had been a specialist pain counsellor for a long time, many years. And I was starting to realise with sudden clarity that people in pain can develop a good relationship with a chronic pain management practitioner, but that when that relationship is, we know somebody goes to a program or they have 10 sessions with a counsellor or whatever they have, then they've got to go back into the real world. And my horror at the time was that there was no consumer organisation to support people that live with chronic pain. I looked around in desperation because I wanted to be able to say to my clients, there is an organisation that will understand your pain experience. But at that time, there wasn't anything at all. And pain was incredibly stigmatised at that time. So with the help of Rotary, we started Chronic Pain Australia, and it's been an organisation that has maintained a very close connection to the people that live with the problem. We are not representing industry, we're not representing medical or other health professionals. We have good partnerships with medical and other health professionals, but really we're here for you. We're here to be the voice for people that live with chronic pain. We use that voice to share with Australia every year the experiences of people in chronic pain. And today we will share the 2020 National Pain Survey results with you. And we're really keen to hear some of your thoughts about what we're finding year to year in this survey. And there's a few interesting things about this survey. We will work through the survey in some detail, and I will be asking our panel members to reflect on their views on what these survey results mean for them as people that live with chronic pain. So why don't we introduce everybody on the panel? Now, I'd like to start with, I'm going to start with the people on the panel who are representing people that live with chronic pain. And straight up, I'm going to go all the way to North Queensland and welcome Kate. Kate is a community pharmacist who has lived with the disruption of chronic pain, not only on her career as a community pharmacist, but also in her role as a loving mum with beautiful children, and how chronic pain really interfered with her ability to do what she needed to do as a mum with young children. So welcome, Kate, and we'll hear more from you in a little while. I'd like to also welcome Megan. Megan is living with a very complex pain condition, which I'm sure we'll learn a bit more about. And you might notice that Megan is coming to us from a hospital room where she's getting some investigation of how chronic pain has affected her other body systems in this really intense experience of pain that she has had to experience over a long period of time. Now, Megan has, like Kate, Megan has suffered the disruption that pain has on working life, on family life. Having said that, has a fantastic family and network, supportive network. So welcome, Megan. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining us from your hospital room at this really intense time. So welcome. I'd like to introduce Daniel. Daniel has joined us all the way from Geelong. Hi, Daniel. Good to have you with us. Daniel is also a health professional. He is a podiatrist and has, in common with Kate and Megan, has experienced the disruption that pain has created for his professional life, but also on his personal life, his recreational life. Being the sort of guy that loves a bit of a physical sport, he's had to really bite the bullet with how does he manage that juggling act between doing what you love doing and having to manage pain, which means a bit of a juggling act from time to time. But we'll hear more from Daniel a little later in the program. Thanks, Daniel, for joining us. What's it like in Geelong at the moment? Is it lovely down there?
Oh, it's beautiful. Best place in the world to be.
Great to hear from you, Daniel. So welcome. I'd also like to welcome Archie. Now, Archie, again, is joining us from a hospital bed. I'm very sorry to hear that, Archie. It's a challenge, isn't it, living with chronic pain? But Archie is our recently appointed Executive Director of Chronic Pain Australia. So Archie has a multitude of pain conditions that have come together in the perfect storm. Nevertheless, Archie is managing her pain and she's doing beautifully well, notwithstanding being in hospital at the moment. So welcome, Archie. Great to have you with us. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Tamara Nation, who is our medical representative on this panel. Welcome, Tamara. It's great to see your face again. Tamara is focused on what we call integrative medicine, which is where you really are looking at the whole person rather than just the tiny little piece that often people sort of realise that medically speaking, we often only get a little part of ourselves that is dealt with. But Tamara, as an integrative GP, is specialised in looking at the whole person and also has a very deep knowledge and understanding of medicinal cannabis and what it's like to prescribe medicinal cannabis. And it brings a wealth of experience and compassion to the panel. So welcome, Tamara. It's great to have you with us. Now, who else have we got? We've got now, I think, last but not least, I'd like to introduce you to the President of Chronic Pain Australia. This is Jared. Jared is another community pharmacist and has been the President of Chronic Pain Australia for 2 years now. Now, Jared is a tireless advocate for people living with their own health condition and believes that people should become the leader of their team. And so I'm going to hand over to Jared at this point because I'm going to ask you the question, Jared. Tell me what's important from your point of view about National Pain Week. Why would we have something called National Pain Week?
Well, that's a great question, Coralie, and without your vision originally, this wouldn't exist. So Pain Week is about raising awareness about the experiences for people in pain, both for the general community, for people in pain, so that they know that there are other people out there and there are people who are helping to work with them for their experiences and for people to understand that. And also for decision makers to see exactly how much this has an impact on people's lives and how the decisions that government, for instance, can make will either improve or negatively impact people's lives just with the stroke of a pen.
And we've seen that on a few occasions in recent years. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit later, especially as we reflect on some of the findings in the National Pain Survey 2020. So I wonder then, I'm going to throw over to our people that live with chronic pain and just ask you, I've done a bit of a broad brush introduction of you all, but I think it'd be great if you could share with us, and we'll start in reverse order this time. Archie, can I start with you? And could you just give us a bit of an idea, what is it like for you living with chronic pain?
So living with chronic pain to me is quite complex.
I think
Every
we've got,
aspect of my life.
that's better. Start again, Archie. We didn't have.
Sorry, so living with chronic pain is quite complex. It impacts every aspect of my life, both professionally and personally. It's impacted me pretty much from the moment I was born, because I was born with necrotizing enterocolitis, and I've experienced pain from a pain that I couldn't ignore from about the age of 8, and I've had ongoing issues. And living with pain can be not only isolating, it can be disheartening, it can be stressful, it can be all sorts of emotions that impact you internally and externally, and it also can impact your relationships, your friendships, and your connections with other people. It's a very isolating experience, particularly when you don't know that it will ever go away, and in some cases with chronic pain it doesn't go away. So it's about that acceptance and that normalization that this is what your life is like, and how to adjust to living with life with chronic pain and living with life with this new normal that you try to cope with and try to work your life around. So definitely adjustment.
You mentioned early in your reflection there about the effect on your emotions, how chronic pain really has a massive impact on how you feel. So I want to just go now to Daniel, would you mind, giving us your reflections, please, what it's like to have chronic pain, and whether you can relate to what Archie's just reflected.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to what Archie's talking to there with emotions. Although I no longer live with chronic pain on a daily basis, I do live with a heightened sensitivity to pain. And, our emotions and the way we feel are highly linked with pain. They're not separate. So anyone at any time who might be feeling pain will notice that, their state of mind and the way they think about certain things, what they're trying to focus on, will be impacted by that. And also vice versa. If you happen to be feeling a little bit down or happy for that matter, the flow-on effect can also go the other way and have an impact on pain itself.
Interesting, isn't it? The physiology of chronic pain is so complex, and that the physiology of emotion has an impact on the pain experience itself. Kate, what's your thought about that? I mean, have you found that your pain experience has had a big impact on your life?
Oh, it's had a huge impact on my life, Coralie. Thank you. And again, like the others have said, it's been social, emotional, mind, body, spirit. It's affected everything. I can relate to that feeling about the emotions being linked too, because I think that is definitely a thing. But something I'd like to say is it took me a while to convince my doctor that I wasn't suffering from depression. I had low moods because I had pain all the time, because when I didn't have pain or the pain was manageable, my mood was fine. I'd have a flare up of pain and my mood would drop. So, I think there was that, it took me a while to get through that with her. But no, it's definitely, and with my work, you introduced me as a community pharmacist, and, I love that job. But at the moment, I'm able to only do really, really short shifts, and I've got a great boss that helps me do that. So I've actually changed careers now, and I'm what you'd call a consultant pharmacist, because I can work around my own hours. So it has taken away the career that I loved. Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? So, again, a massive impact on the way you do things, but having to be really adaptable, clearly having to be very adaptable, and then accepting that change is part of the pain experience. Is that the case for you, Megan?
Most definitely. I think as difficult as the pain has been to manage and to live with, it is also about accepting the fact that, for me personally, accepting the fact that I have chronic pain, accepting the fact that I'm not able to do what I used to do. My pain specialist often tells me that I need to be realistic and accept that I can only do a third of what I think I can do. So having to really sit down and take into account the chronic pain on a day-to-day basis, like with any activity, whether it's work, whether it's social life, a holiday, for me, uni as well. It's not just thinking whether I have the time to do it. It's thinking, will I be able to do it because of my chronic pain? So unfortunately for me, chronic pain, it's like a shadow or like a really For me, as a Gen Y, a stage 5 clinger, we would call it, something that just won't leave you alone. And it's really hard. It's like a weight on your shoulders. And so having to live with that and deal with that personally and professionally and emotionally is a struggle in itself on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I tell you what, it makes you pretty strong, doesn't it? You know, the what you have to withstand when you live with chronic pain, you develop these enormous reservoirs of resilience and strength to be able to deal with it. Okay, so thank you very much. These are the 4 people on our panel who are really speaking out for other people that live with chronic pain. So you're very welcome to ask questions or make comments in our Facebook page. And we've got one of our team will be sending those messages to me as much as it's possible. And we want your voice in here as well, wherever you are in this wonderful country. Let's move on. We've got something that we'd like to share with you. There is a new National Pain Week 2020 website. We refresh it every year. And this year you're going to see on that website some stories which are told in video. And I'd like to share one with you right now. And let's just go. I think, Megan, can you share the screen with that video, please? You might recognise this person in this video.
Hi, my name's Megan and I have endometriosis, adenomyosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome. Since sort of being a young teenager, I've always experienced some sort of pain, and it wasn't until I was 18 that I was officially diagnosed with endometriosis. I was also diagnosed with adenomyosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it wasn't until about 3 years ago that things took a turn for me and I became quite unwell. We flash back to sort of mid-20s, like pre this happening, I was quite successful with work. I had just been headhunted into a very big position and a very important role. On top of that, I was studying full-time at uni as well, distance education. I had a big social life, always busy and always doing everything I could to help myself and to help other people, and I was just used to that. When things changed, it kind of felt like my life was just spiraling. Like I couldn't understand why I couldn't do what I wanted to do anymore and why I was so tired and why I was in so much pain. And I think it's also had a big impact on my relationships as well. When someone meets you and accepts you and gets to know you, it's not just you that they have to accept. It's like this ugly shadow behind you that follows you wherever you go. And I think it's something that's probably going to be the future for me now, that I may never find someone who can really accept me for who I am and stand by me. Like I'm very independent, so I tend to look after all my medical stuff myself, knowing that I might not ever find someone who can deal with that sort of thing and also accept me is quite hard as well. And I think that's been a significant impact, and I'm sure other people with chronic pain experience that as well. I'm really proactive in checking on my mental health and having strategies to ensure that if things aren't right, that I can try and fix them straight away, or at least have people to talk to, whether that's my family or whether that's someone professional. And things like, you know, meditation is really good as well, and having some time for self-care. And I do a lot of charity work when I can to just give back, to make me realize that although I'm having a bad day, there are other people having bad days as well, and I still want to help as much as I can. And the main person I see would be my pain specialist, who also specialises in gynecological issues, particularly endometriosis. So he is perfect for me, and he's just wonderful. You know, not only is he a specialist, his bedside manner is just incredible, and he gets me and he gets what my ambitions are and my approach as well, and he understands that and he takes that into account when we talk about treatment and we talk about medications and we talk about the future as well, which is just incredible, because I really feel like I can trust him, and I feel like what he's doing is always in my best interest. So I feel very lucky to have found him. I have a wonderful support network around me. I have my family, my mum, dad, my sister, brother-in-law, my nieces as well, my extended family, my friends, and all of them are just so understanding, and they never judge me, and they're always there for me whenever I need them. I don't have to feel bad if I'm not able to do something or if I need them to help me, and I don't need to feel like I'm ever being judged. It's just so good for my mental health and my emotional well-being as well. I think I'd probably be proud of the fact that I'm still very much the person I've always been on the inside. I'm often told that I'm very selfless and very kind. The fact that I'm still able to be that person and still want to do everything I can for the people around me is something I'm proud of, because I think it's very easy to become very negative and shut off from the world. And so the fact that I don't do that, and the fact that I'm still able to be very much the person I was, I'm very happy with that. If I had anything to say to myself, it would be just know that life's going to be hard for the next couple of years, but you'll get through it, and that you'll be okay.
I hope you enjoyed that video. We've had a little bit of feedback on the Facebook page. I think it resonates with a lot of people, doesn't it? Megan's story is absolutely, it resonates with so many of us that live with chronic pain. So thanks, Megan, for sharing that, and thanks to the other people. You can go to the National Pain Week website and you can see a number of other stories in video. Please do. And could you add your comments or add your thoughts about what resonates for you as you are sharing this, the stories. I think that the power here is in everybody understanding that we have so much in common, and that pain is an incredibly disruptive, challenging experience. But when we're together, it is actually something that improves pain. Just by knowing that you've got somebody connected to your story that appreciates you sharing is a massive connection. And so we're very grateful to everybody who shared their stories for National Pain Week 2020. I'm going to now go into a new part of this Facebook Live event. We're going to talk about the survey results. We've been undertaking this survey as it stands for 3 years, but we've undertaken many previously. Since 2011, we've been surveying Australians about their experience of pain, and many things remain the same. And you're going to get a chance to share your views. Please go to the Facebook page and give us your comments. We want you to be part of this Facebook Live event. But let's just start out by seeing who responded to our survey. And you can see that there were, again, in 2020, a massive number of people were happy to get involved. And when you think about surveys, it's a bit unusual, isn't it, that so many people wanted to participate in the survey. And this is very consistent for us every year. We get more than 1,000, sometimes as many as 1,500 people will join in to give us some idea of how they view the situation, the landscape for people that live with chronic pain. So you can see that once again, we had the vast majority of our respondents were female. Who knows why that is the case? We all have our own theories about why this might be the case. We have, I think it's 12, just let me see the numbers here. We've got 12% were male, so still a good representation. You can see too that the vast majority are in the 45 to 54 year age group, but we still have very young, 18-year-olds that are experiencing chronic pain. And as you heard from Archie has experienced chronic pain since as long as she can remember. And of course, you do have older people. In the 75 plus age group, we had 2%. But it's a myth, isn't it, that this is an old person's problem. This is a real problem experienced by 3.2 million Australians. It's a very big number. And you can see that the majority are not the very elderly. Let's go to the next slide. And you'll see here, this is where we asked everybody a question about their relationship with GP, general practice. And you can see here that, generally speaking, people are going to see their GP around about once a month, but it can be more frequent and it can be less frequent. But the majority are seeing their GP on average once a month. And we asked the question, how well do you think your GP manages your chronic pain? And you can see that it's you know, pretty ordinary. 5 out of 10 is the mark that's been given by Australians for how they perceive their GP is involved in managing their chronic pain. Then we asked some open-ended questions. And the open-ended question is, and we asked this of all health professionals, relationships with health professionals, what are the most important things for GPs to know, understand and do? And you can hear this theme coming through, which is, please understanding that my pain is real. It is not imaginary. It's not in my head. Please understand that it's exhausting. Pain takes energy. It takes my energy. And I'm not making this up. I am not a malingerer. This is so common. We've heard this since 2006, that these are the common experiences of people that are approaching their GP. Now, I want to say very categorically that not every GP is the same. Just like people in pain, every GP is an individual. And I know many who are brilliant human beings who are very, very connected to their patients. And I think you've already heard some of our faces in pain representatives here today are saying that the real breakthrough moment was when the relationship with the GP was on firm ground. It was very trusting. It was very empowering. So this is certainly not a critique of general practice. We would not like to do that. I think this is interesting. We are not one size fits all. We're unique. Going to the next slide, we asked the same question of pharmacist relationship. Of course, your relationship with your pharmacist is really crucial. Pharmacists administer prescription and non-prescription medicines. And here, again, monthly was about the period of time that a visit occurs. And later on, we're going to get some reflections from the panel on all this. I just want to cover this ground so that you know what's ahead. And you can see that the pharmacist's role in managing my pain is 4 out of 10. And some of the open-ended responses were again very similar. Don't make me feel guilty when my prescription is being filled. So this idea that there is some stigma attached, it can be attached. And again, not all pharmacists are the same. Not all health professionals are the same. But the judgmental nature of some of the experiences is really clearly unhelpful. Let's just quickly go to the next slide. And this was the other health professionals, and you can see that a physiotherapist ranks pretty important in the health professional team, with 52, more than half of all participants go to see a physiotherapist, pain specialist, and a pain specialist is a doctor. Pain specialist is somebody who's done their medical training, but then on top of that, they have done their pain training, which is quite significant, quite complex study. Psychologists, massage therapists, exercise physiologists, chiropractors, OTs, occupational therapists, that is, dietitians, psychiatrists, osteopaths. You can see that it goes right down to social work, which only a couple of 2 or 3% of our participants did see a social worker. And I know, you might think, well, why would you need to see a social worker? I can tell you from my own experience, counselling, that if their work is so disrupted by chronic pain that they can no longer work, poverty soon follows. When poverty follows, if the relationships haven't already broken up, they are under a lot of stress. And once that starts to happen, yes, a social worker is somebody who can provide a lot of support for people whose lives are that disrupted by chronic pain and consequent poverty. So do people find access these other health professionals easily? Mostly yes, but almost equally no. Do you find them affordable? Overwhelmingly no. It is really, really challenging to find a budget to go and see a physiotherapist. You can be out of pocket $90 or $100 to see a physiotherapist, or more in some cases. So similarly, a psychologist, if you're out of pocket, it's more than that. It's $100, $200 to see a psychologist. So yes, this is not easy. And I'm sure we're going to have a robust discussion about that in a little while. Stigma. How would you rate your feelings of stigma? Well, I would say it's a 7 out of 10. Our 1,200 participants felt that it was really quite high, 10 being a constant sense of being stigmatised. And it's really important, it's very important, 8 out of 10, that the public understands what it's like to live with chronic pain. And of course, this is the beginning. Once understanding is established, this is the beginning of reducing the stigma. Going on to the next one, we asked direct questions about stigma, open-ended questions. And, you know, I'm sure that none of this is new to you. Being told that I'm a bludger, I'm wasting the taxpayers' money. Being told that pain is a state of mind, and if I got some hobbies and some friends, it would improve. And, you know, while everybody knows that it's great to have hobbies and great to have friends, to be dismissed as only needing to have a few hobbies is quite disrespectful and indeed stigmatising. The stigma of being young in chronic pain has been raised, not for the first time this year, that if you're young, often the health professionals around you say you're too young for chronic pain. You know, you just need to get on with it. This is really common and very unfortunate that a young person is deprived not only of their young life, but also of the dignity of being respected that they do have this chronic pain experience. So moving on to the next slide. In 2018, we asked no questions about medicinal cannabis. It wasn't on our radar. But in the 2018 survey, we became aware that in so many of the responses, I think it was 3/4 of all responses, the word cannabis was introduced into the spontaneous responses of people that responded to that survey. So we've since asked quite specific questions about medicinal cannabis, and we'll talk about some of the trends in this, but you'll see here that 33% of all participants had spoken to their GP about medicinal cannabis. Now, this is a growing number. This has grown over the 3 years. Still 2/3 haven't. And there has been an increase, 10%, nearly 11% of all participants have noticed a change in GP willingness to prescribe. Now, it's not a big number, but it's a beginning. So, you know, these are encouraging numbers. In the next one, we couldn't help ourselves. We had to ask about the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the experiences of people in pain. And yes, people are saying, the majority are saying that it has changed the way they're managing their pain. And interestingly, the use of telehealth is being seen as, by the majority, as something that they have been using to meet with their, especially doctors are now using telehealth. And we had positive and negative comments in the next slide about working from home, and how that has given, if you work from home, you're not commuting, and so you've got more energy left over for some of those work activities. And you can see there that if you're immunocompromised, which some people living with some pain conditions are, then almost everything has to happen at home during this period so that you can stay safe. But some people were saying that the stress of COVID-19 has made their pain worse. So moving on to the next slide, this link that telehealth means that I don't have to do things physically, and the benefits of that, and that maybe there's going to be a residual benefit for people in chronic pain of having telehealth around. The majority would consider using telehealth options after COVID is over. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that is the substance of the survey for this year. Now, let's just move on. I think it's really important that we start to now get into the meat of this. I would like to go now to, let's just talk now to Tamara. Dr. Tamara Nation is our GP. Tamara, would you like to make some comments about what we found about the GP findings in this survey?
Sure, Coralie. I personally just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to my chronic pain patients that took me down this road to have a special interest and enabled me to learn a lot more about it. And so I want to validate all of you here and express my gratitude to you. So, Coralie, I think it's really reasonable, the results from the survey, in particular the GP experience and the relationship issues that patients feel they're experiencing with their GP. From a medical point of view, it has been published in the Australian Journal of General Practice a couple of years ago that a fundamental part of chronic pain management for individuals that suffer from it is the doctor-patient relationship. So why there may have been a reduction in the perception or reduction in the value add of that relationship, it's going to be on an individual case-by-case basis. However, I'm comfortable saying that I suspect, as with any chronic complex illness, time is extraordinarily important, and spending time with an individual who suffers from chronic illness needs to be done in order to properly engage, address concerns, and formulate that partnership that you need to have in order to be successful. So I'm really going to ask you guys, in terms of, was time a key trigger for the reduction in the scores? Was it a sense of judgment that was a reduction, and attitude, which was a trigger for the reduction in that score? It's your survey. You'll be best placed to dive deeper into that.
Can I make a comment, Tamara? One of the things that happened in 2018, when we first started this particular format of the survey, was that in February that year, codeine was no longer available over the counter. And you might remember that Chronic Pain Australia was very vocal that there had been no consultation with people in pain about the effect, the impact that that might have. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the stigmatisation of chronic pain has increased and that the relationship with the GP has suffered. Whether it's coincidental, certainly some of the stories are that those discussions about medicines are getting more and more difficult, and that GPs are actually more and more under the pump from the regulators about their prescription of opioid medicines.
Yes, I think that's a really important point. And I think that's a failure to really understand from a clinical point of view that chronic pain is so complex. There is no one tablet or no one therapy that can address an individual's concerns and management of a chronic complex illness. So if people were relying, potentially from a clinician point of view, if clinicians were relying on a prescription to assist their patient with the management of their condition, then this would clearly be a weakness in terms of the management plan, and clearly a reason why there may have been a deterioration if that prescription or the need for a prescription was then a point of contention.
Yeah, well said. Can I just remind our viewers that the survey that you've just had a snapshot view of is available in its entirety with a very comprehensive report on the National Pain Week website. Does anybody want to ask? I've got a couple of questions here. I'm just going to go now to Kate. Kate, we mentioned earlier that you had to manage pain and parent at the same time. Can you give our viewers an idea of how you did that? How did you manage your pain while parenting?
Oh, that was an extremely difficult time in my life. And my kids were quite small when I got pain. They were still in primary school. The youngest one was still in primary school, and it affected my whole way that my mood. I was irritable. I was short. My temper was not good. Felt like I couldn't do the fundamental things that they needed their care. You know, I couldn't cook them dinner at night. I couldn't get them up and off to school. And this wasn't a daily basis, but it happened enough to really impact on the kids as well. They really suffered from it, and they just knew. They would always know when mum was in pain. And I didn't realise what a real negative effect it had on them until later in life when we've talked about it, and they've let me know. But one of the things that I did have was a really good support network. I had their father still lived locally, and he was great. He'd pick them up and he'd take them to school and he'd cook them meals. I had friends that would drop off food for us. And the other times that we used to just have baked beans or Weet-Bix for dinner. But I wouldn't have been able to do it without that support network around me. Yeah, and it still gave me a lot of, for years I had a lot of guilt feelings over that.
Guilt. Isn't that part of chronic pain? I'm just going to go to our panel now, and I'm just going to ask if any member of our panel would like to comment on anything that Tamara has mentioned. We've mentioned a few issues here. We've got the parenting issue that we've just raised with Kate. Tamara has raised the GP relationship and the complexity of that relationship and the time needed. And yet the funding doesn't really support the time needed, does it? We've got a system around general practice which is very unhelpful. We have issues of having a support network and what a difference that makes. But I'm just going to hand it over now to our people in pain, to Archie, to Kate, to Daniel, and to Megan. Is there anything that you wanted to make a comment on before we move on?
Yeah, I would. I'd really like to thank Tamara for raising the Practitioner-Client Alliance and the research there on that one. I think it's something that all of us as health professionals need to have a really good look at and realise our responsibility as health professionals is to really create that alliance and to understand, as mentioned also, it's always multifactorial. There is no one thing that's going to solve a problem, and that simplistic way of looking at things, particularly with something like chronic pain, is something that I think we all need to have a really good look at ourselves. And if we're not feeling comfortable at our ability in managing those things, then to put the hand up and look for that support or that extra knowledge, or in some cases also acknowledge when referral on is the right thing to do for a client. And to also talk to guilt and emotions and maybe even shame for people that experience chronic pain. It is something that's probably intertwined in every single one of those cases because of the impact on that person's identity and sense of self in terms of how they value themselves or understand how they contribute to society or their own social networks. What value do they have in the world? When pain does impact your ability to contribute, it affects our own sense of self-worth, which then affects our mood, and that's where it can sort of snowball. So I really appreciate those touch points there. Thank you.
So you've just mentioned, Daniel, and I'm just going to go to Jared, because you've just mentioned a few really interesting words: shame, guilt, and the complex emotions around living with the de-identification, if you like, of you're losing your identity as pain takes over. So, Jared, in the survey, there was some interesting trends. There was an interesting trend, wasn't there, that pharmacists weren't travelling that well in terms of the way that relationship is being seen by people in pain. You got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's interesting that follows closely on behind the same change in sentiment that the GPs have experienced in this result.
Yes.
From that point of view, I would say that there is definitely the access to medicines is probably what's tying into this, because both professions have been affected, pharmacists more so. There's quite a negative sentiment at the moment around pharmacists, and that interaction that pharmacists have with a person who's experiencing chronic pain can be very stigmatizing, making people feel like they're being questioned. Why do you need this medicine in the first place? How questions around establishing the need for a medicine are asked are really, really important. And they shouldn't be done in such a way that they treats every single person the same. Every individual who presents in a pharmacy is the same, is a different person. And while they may have similar experiences, the pharmacists and other health professionals need to remember that each individual needs to have that conversation in an individual manner. Like, I can't say that word enough. And the stigma that is associated around the way questions are asked and the way people interact with a person in pain is really significant, and it reduces people's desire to interact with the health system. And so that means that people get poorer outcomes in the long run because they feel like they can't access health properly.
Thanks, Jared. We've got about 15 minutes left in this, and I would really like to go to Archie and Megan and ask you a question. What do you think, I'll start with Megan, what do you think the health professionals, the health practitioners need to do to improve this relationship? What do they need to do? How do you get the best out of the practitioner?
So for me, I'm very, very lucky. I have a wonderful GP and a lot of great health professionals that I work with. It has taken some time to find a really good health team, and it is a chance to do that. But I think what I really value from my health team, particularly my GP, is the level of just support and understanding and compassion as well. There are often times that we sit and we talk about what's going on and talk about my chronic pain and talk about what's working and what's not working. And my GP really engages me in the conversation, and it's the decisions that are made, we make them together, which I think is important. I think having a doctor that sort of talks to you and tells you how you're going to do things doesn't work. You need to voice in these conversations and, you know, really discuss what's going on to make sure it's going to work for you. And I think what's also important is having a doctor who's not going to give up on you. There are often times when I go to my GP and I say, you know, this is the issue. I think I need a referral. Maybe I need this. I'm not sure. And he'll sit with me until we find an answer or until we find a solution, which I think is something that a lot of GPs and health professionals might be lacking. Sometimes they can be very dismissive of you if they can't help you. So I think having someone who won't give up on you is really important. And
so Megan, it sounds like you've really done your homework to find a practitioner or a GP that really gets your situation. And you mentioned also it takes time. Archie, is this your experience as well? What's your experience with GP?
My experience has not been as fortunate as Megan's, unfortunately. I had a very hard time finding health professionals who actually wanted me to who wanted to take me on as a patient. A very classic example is when I moved from the western suburbs from the southeast suburbs of Melbourne to the western suburbs. It was actually quite difficult for me to find a general practitioner that would take me on. They looked at my chart, they looked at my medical history, they looked at my medications, and they actually turned me away. They actually have said, you know, we don't prescribe these medications in our clinic. I'm sorry, you need to find someone else. And actually it took me about 8 months to find a general practitioner who would take me on. And for 8 months, my partner had to take time off work to drive me an hour and a half to just the general practitioner every month, back and forth, for about 8 months until we found a health professional that was willing to take me on.
The other thing you're raising there, Archie, is persistence, isn't it? The idea that you have to persist, you have to have a goal in mind. And look, you know, I think it's really important that we make this statement that we would welcome conversations and dialogue with general practitioners and other health professionals who really want to, you know, make a difference for people in pain, like Tamara has clearly, by focusing on the relationship, on building that the therapeutic relationship with their patients, because clearly it is a partnership, isn't it? Once you find that partner, your health partner, you can start to solve problems together. Now, so I'm just wondering, we've got about 10 minutes, 9 or 10 minutes. So over to you, panel members. Anybody who would like to make a comment about the medicinal cannabis findings in this survey. Again, we're seeing a bit of change. If you go to the National Pain Week website, you'll see a comparative report of what's changed over the last 3 years, given that it's a very similar survey. And what we found in this year was that medicinal cannabis is something that GPs are getting more comfortable talking about. Is that your experience, people in pain on the panel?
I could make a quick comment on that one. I think, you know, the way that things are going with medical cannabis is on the right path, and I'd love to be able to give it a go myself. My GP supports me in this and she's willing to prescribe it for me. But my worry with that, my concern that makes me not able to do it, is that in Queensland I need to give up my licence. I can't drive. So that's a real big barrier, I think, for my independence, and my job is driving too. So, you know, I've got to drive to see clients in their home. So yes, it's a shame.
This is something that's got to change, isn't it? We've got to really start talking to our politicians. I mean, is this something that we can ask people in pain to do, is to get active with contacting your local member of parliament, making an appointment to go and sit down and have a conversation with your member of parliament, because really things change when the people demand change. Now, this is something that's been brewing. We've got a lot of data now. We know how Australians are relating to the topic. So I'd say to you, as somebody who has watched some of these changes over a long period of time, that it really does come down to you. It comes down to you having investing your time, a small part of your time, in making an appointment, not just writing. It's very easy, isn't it, to push a letter aside, but actually making an appointment, going and seeing your local member. I remember a long time ago, I went to my local member and I said, this is a problem. And this was in 2007. And he flat out, actually, it wasn't just one, it was two. And if I said who they were, you'd know who they were quite well known. And they both just didn't believe that chronic pain was a problem. They just didn't believe it. They out and out didn't believe it. And one said, well, I haven't heard anybody in my office talk about chronic pain, so it mustn't exist. So this is why it's really important that the people have a voice with their own MP. We have a pretty good democracy in Australia and we need to use it. So back to you. Any comments from the panel on anything so far?
Really, Jared here. I'll just say that it is absolutely essential that people do have conversations with their local members of parliament, both at state and federal level. Now, that can be a little bit intimidating and can be a little bit daunting for people to consider how they're going to do that. But one area that Chronic Pain Australia does have experience in is having those kind of conversations. So if people are interested in making an appointment with their local member of parliament, if they contact Chronic Pain Australia, we can give you advice on how to have that conversation and what to talk about. Mainly, the most important part of it is about your own personal experiences, because that's what matters and that's what has an impact. But if people would like to do that, but they're unsure about how to go about it, or if they're feeling intimidated about having a conversation with somebody in that setting, contact us and we'll give you guidance on how to do that.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment, if possible. So I've been prescribing medicinal cannabis for many years now, more than 3, and there's been a massive change in the amount of education that's available now to clinicians than there was when I initially started and had to travel for learning. And I agree with what you've both said, Jared and Coralie, in terms of your voices as individuals, and the need for personalised and individualised medicine is so powerful. don't underestimate it. Yes to politicians, but yes to your individual practitioners. Don't give up. It is the only way that you can make changes for the positive.
Here. Any comments from our panel of people that live with chronic pain?
In relation to everything that everyone has said, there's so many barriers and challenges, but the important thing, I guess, for National Pain Week is to know that we're not experiencing this alone, and it's quite difficult for people who don't live in chronic pain to understand what it's like. But as you can see from this panel, and as you can see from National Pain Week website, the stories and the videos and the written stories that anyone at any age can actually experience chronic pain. It's very important to not judge and think about what a box of what someone living with chronic pain lives like or is like. It's just a new normal that most people with chronic pain have to adjust and have to accept. And it's a very complex part of our lives, and we just do our best to try to live our lives as best as we can. And we're very thankful that we're able to share our voices with the community. And as Chronic Pain Australia, we truly believe that the voice is what matters, and we want to support and represent the voices of people in pain. We're also thankful for, I just wanted to just a quick thank you to Spectrum Therapeutics, who has helped sponsor this broadcast today through an awareness and education grant that's been supporting this broadcast to be able to happen. So that's a big thank you. But there's so many barriers, and as everyone, Daniel, Megan, Kate, and myself have talked about, it's quite challenging to live with chronic pain, and sometimes more debilitating than chronic pain itself is the stigma. So we I think as the general public, although National Pain Week is only 1 week in the year, pain can happen to anyone at any time, at any place, at any moment, and any day. So please continue to keep having the strength to speak out, to empower yourself, to empower others, and to self-advocate, as well as advocate for other people who may be experiencing chronic pain and chronic conditions and invisible disabilities like chronic pain.
Thanks, Aki. They're really, really wise words there. And I just, there's a question that's come through for Tamara. Tamara, as a medical person and somebody who's got some expertise and experience with prescribing medicinal cannabis and helping people manage their pain with medicinal cannabis, can you give your thoughts on what needs to be done to make medicinal cannabis more affordable and accessible for consumers? And that's the first part of the question. And the second part is, were you surprised at some of the commentary from GPs in the survey when they responded to patient requests for medicinal cannabis? There were some comments there about, you know, that you're a drug seeker, you just want to get high for, you know, without spending money, etc., etc. What are your thoughts, Tamara? So there's two parts of that question. What needs to be done to make it affordable and accessible? And second, your thoughts about those responses.
So in terms of costs, I think it's multifactorial. Firstly, there's the actual costs that the producers have to take on board to bring the product to the marketplace. And secondly, there's also the costs involved in the processes in order to prescribe it. It's quite complex through the TGA and the Special Access Scheme or the Authorised Prescribers Scheme. And then there's also the cost, because it's not PBS subsidised. So to bring that down, there needs to be appropriate trials. It needs to be a registered good in the first place. So we're probably a few years away from seeing significant cost reductions, although over the past 3 years that I've been prescribing, there's more products in the marketplace, so there's more competition. And also as more people access it, the providers are able to have bigger quantities, and so there's again a reduction in cost.
Okay.
So there is some movement. With regards to the responses that individuals may receive when they speak to their health practitioner about medicinal cannabis, I think that's a lot to do about the stigma associated with the product, and probably a lack of education, understanding about medicinal cannabis as compared to illicit medication. Sorry, someone was wanting to say something. Megan.
Oh, no, sorry. Someone came in the door. Sorry.
Coming back, Tamara, to your comment there. I guess you're making the point that medicinal cannabis is laboratory controlled, and therefore you know exactly what product you're going to be prescribed. Whereas with the smoked variety, or the variety that you might buy on the street, that you don't really know what you're getting. You don't know what's combination you're getting. You don't know how much psychoactive compared to non-psychoactive. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So there's a stigma, a misplaced stigma compared to the medicinal product, which is specific, medical grade. You're undergoing a therapeutic trial with your client. You're going to work together. You're going to monitor it. You're going to review the medical research around it, and you're going to take the utmost patient care to provide best practice medicine. So simply dismissing it is not paying due justice to the important work that needs to be done in the space.
Okay. All right. So there's a few, we're going to have to wind up because we're just about at that 60-minute point. But there's a few messages that have come out of today. I'd like to thank everybody for their contribution to the discussion today, and for the ones that sent some questions online, and acknowledge the incredible effort that everybody's made to get this event live on Facebook. Starting, of course, with our people that live with chronic pain, the people who are representing the 3.2 million people who live with chronic pain. Our deepest gratitude goes to you for your investment of your time in making a difference in helping bring the voice to the larger population of Australians. So thank you very much. You're all amazing, and I'm so glad I've met you, and you're making a huge difference. So thank you, thank you. I'd like to thank Chronic Pain Australia for doing everything on the smell of an oily rag. It's a charity that has always really struggled to get funding. It seems that, you know, it's a very big and tricky road to get funded to do these sorts of things. So Chronic Pain Australia, thank you, Jared, for all the work that you do. And behind the scenes, of course, we have Leanne, who is the producer for today, as well as Ben, who is the director for today's event. Thank you very much. Now, over to you. Is there anything that anybody would like to say before we sign off?
Can I just say one quick thing? I just want to say, for anyone who has chronic pain, just remember to be kind to yourself, and you know, you're your own advocate, and you are your own best friend. And so if there are days that are difficult and you can't get out of bed, it's okay. Just remember to be kind to yourself, and there's always a new day.
Wise words. Any other thoughts before we go?
I had one quick one too. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll go to Archie first, and then we'll go to Kate.
I just wanted to say that if you wanted to read up about any of our panel members and read up any of the Facebook pain stories or videos, please visit nationalpainweek.org.au. Also, our main website, chronicpainaustralia.org.au. Also, throughout the week, our social medias will have lots of different things happening. The information and resources are on the website, and the hashtag is NPW2020, which is National Pain Week 2020. And thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our sponsor, Spectrum Therapeutics, and thank you to the Faces of Pain this year, and thank you for everyone for being here and making this happen. And to you, Kate.
Thanks, Archie. Kate.
Thanks, Archie. Yeah, mine was a little bit more personal too, just following on from what Megan said. It's taken me 10 years to feel comfortable to speak out about the pain. You know, this is the first time I've gone public with it, and there's going to be people out there that, you know, I've known for a while that don't even know that I have this chronic pain thing. So it's been quite empowering for me, so thank you for that. And if anybody else is out there, you know, that feeling of shame and guilt that we can tend to carry around, or I tended to carry around, somehow I must have done something wrong to cause this to happen. It's just wasted emotion. So yeah, be kind to ourselves, like Megan said. Thanks, guys.
Wise words. Daniel, any final words?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and just speak to those people that are directly experiencing chronic pain. And I want to remind you that you are driving the bus. It is your health, it is your life. And as health professionals, our job is to help you manage your pain. We're not here to tell you what to do. So just please remember that you are in charge. It is your life, and that you got your hands on the steering wheel. Thank you.
No matter how hard it might be to keep driving, you got to keep driving, and there's a lot of us willing to support that. And thank you for saying that, Daniel, because it's often quite difficult living with chronic pain and not being able to advocate for yourself. So remember to have that support network and speak up, and know that you deserve to be treated with respect and with dignity and with care and empathy, without judgment and without stigma.
Thank you, Archie. And now final words from Jared, the President of Chronic Pain Australia.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the panelists for participating today. Coralie, to you for moderating today. Thank you very much. It's an amazing job. And thank you to all of the people who have watched today and who will watch this video after it's posted later as well. If you have questions or comments, please leave them on the Facebook or on the social media where you find it. And visit our websites for how to contact us as well if you'd like to provide further feedback or know how to be involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. And thanks, everybody. From all of us at Chronic Pain Australia, I hope that National Pain Week for you this year is going to be one where some lights go on, where you make connections, where you make new friendships. Please reach out. And until next year, bye.
Take care, everyone. Be well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.